Genesis 40. The cupbearer and the baker. Some time later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended him. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody at the house of the captain of the guard, the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he noticed they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials with him in custody, "Why do you look so sad today?" They replied, "We both had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." The chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me with 3 branches. As it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." Joseph interpreted, "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as before. But when things go well with you, remember me and show kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from Tihi land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being in a dungeon." Seeing the favorable interpretation, the chief baker said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." Joseph explained, "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, he gave a feast for all his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said in his interpretation. However, the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Genesis 41. Pharaoh's dreams. 2 years later, Pharaoh had a dream while standing by the Nile. He saw 7 sleek and fat cows come out of the river grazing among the reeds. Then 7 ugly and gaunt cows came up from the Nile and stood beside the fat cows. The ugly cows ate the fat cows, and Pharaoh woke up. Pharaoh fell asleep again and dreamed of 7 healthy heads of grain on one stalk. 7 thin heads of grain, scorched by the east wind, sprouted and swallowed the healthy heads. Pharaoh awoke, realizing it was a dream. In the morning, troubled by the dreams, Pharaoh called for Egypt's magicians and wise men, but none could interpret them. Then the chief cupbearer remembered his experience with Joseph and told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew in prison who interpreted dreams accurately. Pharaoh summoned Joseph, who, after being groomed, came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh explained the dreams, and Joseph humbly acknowledged that God, not he, could provide the interpretation. Pharaoh recounted the dreams, describing the cows and the grain. Joseph explained that both dreams were one and the same, revealing God's plan. The 7 good cows and grains represented 7 years of abundance, while the 7 lean cows and thin grain symbolized 7 years of ensuing famine. The repetition signified God's certainty and imminence in action. Joseph advised Pharaoh to find a discerning and wise man to oversee Egypt and prepare for the famine by storing surplus grain during the years of abundance. The plan pleased Pharaoh and his officials, and Pharaoh appointed Joseph as the one to execute it, recognizing the Spirit of God in him. Joseph in charge of Egypt. Pharaoh declared Joseph in charge of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. He gave Joseph his signet ring, dressed him in fine linen, placed a gold chain around his neck, and had him ride a chariot as second in command, with people shouting before him, "Make way!" Pharaoh declared Joseph's authority over all except the throne, renamed him Zaphanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as his wife. At 30 years old, Joseph began to manage Egypt's preparations for the famine. During the 7 years of abundance, he collected and stored the surplus grain in each city, amassing such vast quantities that he stopped keeping records. Before the famine, 2 sons were born to Joseph: Manasseh, meaning God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household, and Ephraim, meaning God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The years of abundance ended, and the famine began. But Egypt had food, thanks to Joseph's foresight. As the famine affected other lands, people came to Egypt to buy grain. Pharaoh instructed Egyptians to seek Joseph's guidance, and he opened the storehouses to sell grain as the famine worsened, attracting people from all over the world seeking to buy grain from him. Genesis 42. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. When Jacob learned there was grain in Egypt, he urged his sons to go and buy some to ensure their survival. 10 of Joseph's brothers went, but Jacob withheld Benjamin, fearing harm might come to him. They traveled among others to buy grain as famine gripped Canaan. Joseph, the governor and distributor of grain, recognized his brothers as they bowed before him, though they did not recognize him. Remembering his dreams, Joseph accused them of being spies. They protested, asserting they were honest men, sons of one father, with their youngest brother at home and one brother no more. Testing them, Joseph insisted they would not leave unless their youngest brother came to Egypt. Imprisoning them for 3 days, he later offered this: one brother would stay as a guarantee while the others returned with grain, and brought Benjamin to prove their honesty and avoid death. Feeling guilty, the brothers saw this as punishment for their treatment of Joseph, recalling his pleas for mercy. Reuben reminded them of his warning against harming Joseph. Unbeknownst to them, Joseph understood their conversation, speaking through an interpreter. Overwhelmed, he wept in private, then detained Simeon, binding him before their eyes. Joseph secretly returned their silver and provided provisions. As they journeyed, one discovered his returned silver, causing them anxiety, questioning God's role in these events. Upon reaching Canaan, they recounted the events to Jacob, highlighting their harsh treatment and the demand to bring Benjamin to prove their honesty. Finding every man's silver returned incited fear. Jacob lamented these losses, believing Joseph gone and Simeon lost, distressed at risking Benjamin. Reuben offered his own sons as surety, pledging Benjamin's safe return, but Jacob refused. Heartbroken at the prospect of more loss, Jacob declared Benjamin would not go, fearing further heartbreak. Genesis 43. The second journey to Egypt. The famine continued to be severe, and when Jacob's family exhausted their grain supply, he instructed his sons to buy more food from Egypt. Judah reminded Jacob that the Egyptian governor insisted they could not return without their youngest brother Benjamin. Judah offered to guarantee Benjamin's safety and take personal responsibility, urging his father to send Benjamin so they could survive the famine. Jacob, acknowledging their necessity, instructed them to take a gift of the best products of their land to appease the Egyptian figure, along with double the silver, including that previously found in their sacks. Reluctantly, he sent Benjamin, praying for mercy from God Almighty. The brothers stood before Joseph with Benjamin. Seeing Benjamin, Joseph instructed his steward to prepare a meal for them at his house. Frightened by this gesture, the brothers expressed their concern to the steward about the previously returned silver. The steward reassured them, saying he had received their silver, attributing the return to their God. He then released Simeon to reunite with them. The steward provided water to wash their feet and fed their donkeys, preparing them for the noon meal. When Joseph arrived, the brothers presented their gifts and bowed to him. Joseph inquired about their welfare and the health of their father. Learning Jacob was alive and well, they bowed again. Seeing Benjamin, Joseph blessed him, and overwhelmed by emotion, he left to weep privately. Composing himself, he returned to serve the meal. Joseph dined separately, avoiding the Egyptian custom that shunned eating with Hebrews. Astonished at finding themselves seated by birth order, the brothers were further amazed when Benjamin received 5 times the portion. They feasted and enjoyed the hospitality, drinking freely with Joseph. Genesis 44. A silver cup in a sack. Joseph instructed his steward to fill his brothers' sacks with as much food as they could carry, and to return each man's silver to the mouth of his sack. Additionally, he ordered that his own silver cup be placed in Benjamin's sack. The steward followed Joseph's directions precisely. At dawn, the brothers departed. But soon after leaving the city, Joseph sent his steward to confront them, accusing them of stealing his master's cup, used for drinking and divination. Astonished by the accusation, they defended their honesty, offering that the guilty one would die, and the rest become slaves if the cup was found among them. The steward accepted the offer with a modification. The guilty one would become a slave, and the rest would go free. The brothers quickly lowered their sacks for inspection, starting from the eldest and ending with the youngest, Benjamin, where the cup was found. In distress, they tore their clothes and returned to the city. Upon arrival, they threw themselves to the ground before Joseph, who questioned their actions, inferring his ability to discover their guilt by divination. Judah, overwhelmed, admitted their supposed guilt, resigned to slavery for all, but Joseph only demanded Benjamin's stay. Judah then passionately appealed to Joseph, recounting the family situation, emphasizing Jacob's love for Benjamin and the impact of losing another son. He explained how the brothers could not return without Benjamin, fearing it would lead to their father's demise. Judah reiterated his personal responsibility for Benjamin's safety and offered himself as a substitute for Benjamin, unwilling to witness the inevitable misery that would afflict his father.